So my name is Camille Huser. I'm the Deputy Director. The Director of the program is Susan Jamieson, but she wasn't able to be here today, unfortunately. So I thought I'd start by giving you a bit of a history of our program. So our program in health professions education actually existed already as an on-campus online program. So it existed as an on-campus program, and the face-to-face elements of it were filmed and put on Moodle along with other resources. So it existed as kind of a dual program. And then in 2014-15, Dr. Jameson took the directorship for the program, and I became involved. And we were lucky to be part of the initial bid that Joanne just talked about, from Bold to the MVLS College in 2014. And that's allowed us to set up our first year of fully online teaching in 2015-16, where we had the postgraduate certificate. And then this year, in 2016-17, we've run the postgraduate certificate again with new students. And we're also developing and running the first year of the PG diploma with students that have continued on for a second year with us. So that's the history. And the overview, what does our program look like? So we have the first year, which is a postgraduate certificate year. There's 3 semesters, 1 20-credit course per semester. Then students can exit with the certificate, or they can stay on for a second year to get their diploma. In the second year, there's 3 semesters again. And each semester they have a choice of 3 courses in each semester, and they have to take 2 of them. And there's a little asterisk there because if they want to stay on with us and do a master's, we researched in the specific courses that we asked them to choose. So they have only a choice for 1 of them. And then they can stay on and do a 3rd year with us, which will start in September. And that's to get their master's degree. And that consists of face-to-face tutorials, about a dozen of them for the first semester. And then they'll go on and do their project and dissertation. And this is a little screenshot of what our online course actually looks like for the students. So as you can see, each week has a tab, and each week has a topic. The students are all working full-time usually, and so they're very flexible about when in the week they have to do it, but they have to keep with the program and do each week during the week that's running. So each week they have their intended learning outcomes for the week, and they have an articulate storyline session, which is the main bit of the teaching. That's somewhere between 1 and 2 hours, depending on the topic. And I'll show you a little bit more about this on the next slide. We have a reflection point forum. So during the articulate storyline interactive session, we ask them to reflect on the particular aspects of the topic. And then there's forum where each aspect is a discussion forum, and it's actually summative, and so it's compulsory for the students to post to at least 2 of these each week, and that makes sure that they engage. And there's also a formative quiz that they can take if they want to see how they're doing with their learning. And then each week, depending on the topic and what we've got, we might have additional things on Moodle. So for this week, for example, we had interviews with members of staff. We actually have these almost every week, and that allows the students to feel connected with Glasgow and staff from Glasgow, even though they might be in Jamaica. And then they might have other forms of documents that are helpful for the week's topic. Okay, so I told you I would talk to you a little bit more about Articulate Storyline, which is the software we use to make the main bulk of our interactive lessons. And the reason we use it because it allows for interactivity. So instead of just a PowerPoint with a voiceover, the students have to engage with it a bit more. So for example, here they would get this slide, and this side would be white. They would have 4 buttons to click on. When they click on the buttons in whichever order they might choose, they would get extra text and associated audio with that text, and then they can further click on links to resources or more examples if they want to see that. And so that allows them to focus and engage with the material rather than just passively listen. And the other characteristic of Articulate Storyline, which we really like, is the non-linearity. So for example, here, this particular week was split into 4 main topics. which we arranged in a square to not have too much of a specific order. So the students can choose whichever one they want to look at first. That will take them to a different section of the session. It will take them through slides, exercises, videos. And when they finish that, we come back to this slide, and these sections that they've done have a tick mark, so they know how they're progressing, and they can then click on whichever one they want to look at next. Once they've gone through all 4, they can move next and continue with the teaching session. So again, this allows them to engage with the teaching in a way that's personal to them. And then I wanted to talk to you about the assessment a little bit, because we've had to rethink assessment for online courses. So we do use some traditional individual essays that students have to write on their own, submit on Moodle. But we also use a variety of other types of assessment. The reflection point forum posts, which I mentioned, which they have to post at least twice a week too. And in the marking criteria for this, there's also specifics about engagement and discussion. So they have to engage in discussion with their peers. They can't just be posting and not responding to others. We've used group wikis quite successfully as well. And in one of our courses, we use micro lessons where students have to record themselves giving a 10-minute teaching session and then post it on Moodle, and then they have to look at their peers' ones and peer assess them. So peer assessment is the last element that we've used for micro lessons and for wikis to make sure that they engage with each other's work as well. Okay, so you asked me to talk about my role as well. So I'm the Deputy Director and Assessment Officer. So the kinds of things I do at the moment, because we're creating content, I create a lot of the Articulate Storyline sessions. There's interaction with the students on the forums to make them feel connected with the staff. I help to look after the Moodle courses. I also create all the video interviews that we use. We try and have some every week. I help with designing, planning, marking and moderating the assessments. And the marking takes quite a lot of time, and various other administrative duties as well. And obviously it's not just us two, there's a whole team associated with the program. So there's the director, Susan Jamieson. We also have an administrator, Evelyn Nicol, who's been incredibly helpful, and our e-learning specialist from the Digital Education Unit, who has come in to help quite a lot as well. I want to mention my maternity cover as well, because I'll mention her later. So she was part of the team Yvonne Slater for a while and has also been quite useful. And then we've had to also bring in other members of staff for specific reasons, for marking, for example, and also for some course creation, because it gets quite a big workload. Okay, so then you asked us to talk about the challenges of transitioning to online learning. So I thought the main ones were Moodle. We wanted to know how to make the most of it and not just use it as a long file repository. And then the audiovisual technology. Learning how to film and edit videos is not something we had done before. And we do like to use a lot of videos in the introductions for each course, on welcome forums, and as I mentioned, interviews each week. And in particular, sound quality has been hard to get right. The Articulate Storyline sessions, like I said, it's a very good software. We really like using it, but we wanted to know how to make the most of it by using as much interactivity and non-linearity as possible. We've also had to learn how to write scripts and storyboards, again, something that you don't normally do for face-to-face teaching. And found out that that is quite time-consuming, and we have to find other ways to transmit our enthusiasm, which is not as easy as face-to-face teaching, sorry. And finally, we had to learn how to facilitate asynchronous teaching, again, something we had not done before. So the support we've had initial advisory meetings, so this was before the course started and before we started thinking about each individual course. We had initial advisory meetings with Joanne Murray and Vicky Dale, and learned a lot about online courses and the technologies used for that. So that's been very valuable. For Moodle, There's been a lot of Googling. There's a big online community out there of teachers using Moodle and putting a lot of resources online, and so that has been actually incredibly helpful. And we've also had the help of two e-learning specialists, Dr. Lynn, who works for the medical school, and Jenny Kroll from the digital education, who have been very helpful for that as well. Similarly, for the audiovisual technology, there's been Googling, trial and error. Discovered there's a lot of YouTube videos about making videos, and over time they've gotten better. And we've also had advice from the multimedia unit over there about making nice videos and getting the sound right. And Jenny Crow as well from the digital education unit has helped us with that. With the Articulate storyline, again, Googling has been quite helpful, and trial and error of just trying all the options there and seeing what they do. And again, our e-learning specialists, and that's especially when we come across a problem, when we think we've figured out how to do something, we do it, and then it doesn't quite happen right. So that's when we ask our e-learning specialist, and she comes up with the solutions. Writing scripts and storyboards. So this is something we had not done before because we came from normal, traditional face-to-face campus-based teaching. And that's where Dr. Slater, my maternity cover, was very useful because she came from the BBC. She had a lot of experience in editing radio programs. So she gave us a lot of her experience in how they do it there, and we've used a lot of their models. To facilitate asynchronous teaching, we've each got a tablet, and that's been very useful to be able to be online on the discussion forums at all times of day and night, because the students we've got some in Australia, we've got some in Jamaica, so there's no time that suits very well, and we want them all to get speedy feedback. We've also introduced a few Big Blue Button sessions so that they can have live webinars, and although that's not asynchronous, I think that helps build a kind of a course identity. They know each other, they know us, and I think that really helps them to then have the discussions on the discussion boards afterwards. Having compulsory phone posts, I think, is definitely been very useful because they have to do 2 a week, and most of them just do 2 a week. So I think if they didn't have to, they wouldn't do any more than that. And that's an area that's still work in progress. We're still looking at ways to improve that and improve the experience of the students. How we've supported the learners' transitions. So during week 0, which is the induction week, there is a module developed by the digital education unit with lots of how-to guides and videos and tasks for them to complete to get ready for the course. And there's more than we need there, so we direct them to the ones that they need for our course. And we run our own induction week in week 0, where we have a welcome forum, and we post our own welcome videos saying hello, who we are. And we ask the students to post their own. Most of them just post a text welcome, but more and more they're starting to post videos, and we're getting videos from all over the world, so that's really nice. And Susan also ran 2 Big Blue Button sessions, so they're live webinars which are a bit more similar to face-to-face teaching for them to get used to us and be able to ask any questions and address any concerns they might have. Then in the first few weeks of the course, we just keep a really close eye on the students and make sure that they're able to work through all the material, and we do that through the Gizmo tool on Moodle, which is really useful. And just monitoring forums and any emails they send us. So we make sure in the first few weeks that they're good to go, and they usually are. And the last thing we do to support their transition is that we challenge them. So we ask them to do wikis, group wikis, and we ask them to do micro lessons. And the initial reaction from the students is always, how do I do this? I've never done this before. How do I code a wiki? How do I record myself and upload it? But the feedback we get is always that even though it was challenging, they're really happy to have done it, and now they're much more likely to use these techniques in their teaching because it's an education course. So hopefully we will have helped some of them create some micro lessons that they can then use for their actual teaching. Okay, and the support we've had from the institution. So like I said, we were part of the original BOLD project. And so that allowed us to have these meetings with Joanne and Vicky, who've been very helpful in putting us in the right direction. We also ran one of the first MOOCs from the university, and because there was a fund available for that, we had bought some equipment, and we still use that equipment to make our videos, our weekly videos, and record the audio for the Articulate Storyland sessions. Like I mentioned, we get a lot of help from the digital education unit, both in building content and advising us on the content that we build. And the advice that we've had from the multimedia unit about filming and editing videos. We also have to thank the undergraduate medical school who's allowed us to spend so much time on it, because I've had to step back from a few of my commitments in the undergraduate medical school to be able to do this. And finally, I think this meeting is going to be very helpful. I'm certainly hoping to learn a lot, and any future meetings will be good for networking and sharing good practice. So lastly, you asked about considerations for future development and support. So this is just from our point of view. I think staff time is very important. Developing courses and building material takes a lot longer than we imagined, and definitely a lot longer than preparing for a normal face-to-face lecture. Because we're rerunning the first certificate course, we found that there's also time involved in redevelopment, checking that the links are still up to date. So updating courses is going to take time as well. And recently I found that assessment and marking of assessment is very time consuming as well, especially as the numbers increase. It's very easy to have more students, and we have more than twice the number of students that we did last year. This year on the certificate course, it doesn't require much more teaching time, but the marking of assessment is becoming a big burden. Then we need to think about staff training, like was mentioned earlier, to maintain and enhance our technical skills, upskill ourselves, but also to increase our digital education skills, and by that I mean the pedagogy of online teaching and learning the best ways to do that. Like I've just mentioned, networking events, both university-wide like this one and also wider ones, to be able to share good practice and be innovative. And the last consideration that is, last but not least, is quite important, is IT support. We found that by trying to stretch Moodle is not built for online courses, it's built to support face-to-face courses. And so some elements of it, for example, the 30-minute delay on forums, is really not ideal for online courses, and students complain about this all the time. They want to be able to have discussions, but there's a 30-minute editing delay. So when they write something, it's not going to go up for 30 minutes, and that just stops any flow of discussions. So we need support to be able to develop Moodle for online courses. Okay, and that's it. Thank you. If you have any questions.